Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. Wanted, dead or alive or undead, notorious outlaw Skinner Sweet has been implicated in a series of robberies of local Derry candy shops. When asked for their opinion on the motivation behind these crimes, Derry police commented that Skinner is a real sucker for sweets and advised citizens, "Don't give up hope, we're hot on his trail mix." You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio. Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I am one of your hosts, CM Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hey, everybody.
And Eve Gatto.
Hey, constant readers.
And today we have another Patreon selection from Cody Tucker with American Vampire, Book 1, a DC comic. And Josh is leading our discussion.
All right, hands on. All right. Listeners, this was such a random experience that this book came on our radar. It was actually in July during Bix Weekend. It's a festival here in the Quad Cities. And downtown Davenport had a big marathon, so we hosted The Running Man on the rooftop of the Last Picture House. It was amazing. But friend of the show, Cody Tucker, was there and decided to buy a book. And I said, all right, what book do you want? And he said, American Vampire. And I said, what?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. It turns out that Scott Snyder, who was creating the series, turned Stephen King into writing essentially it's an A and B story for the first 5 issues. Book 1 is 1 through 11. So we get the entire Stephen King arc and we get a little bit of the after in this book. Now, because this is a graphic novel, we're going to have to talk about it in a different structure. And so for this part 1, we are going to cover on the first part of Pearl's story. Then we are going to move to just covering the Skinner Sweet section that was written by Stephen King. And I am so hyped.
This has been on the docket for so long that I remember you handing me the copy of the comic.
Yeah.
And being like, okay, this is on the list. And I remember looking at it and going, I don't know what the fuck this is, and putting it down. Until like a week or two ago when you're like, okay, we're doing American Vampire. And I'm like, the hell's American Vampire? Ends up pretty cool comic book.
Yeah.
Cool. Off the bat, first opinions. What was we jump into our first story. We're going to talk about it kind of in the act structure as opposed to by the comic, because bouncing around isn't going to do us any favors. For the listeners, Stephen King wrote the Skinner Sweet section of the story. So we have a
and it's
Pearl
super
story.
Obvious.
Yeah. As soon as palaver is said, I was like, well, if I didn't know already.
Before we get into our opinions on this particular comic, I wanted to know y'all's experience with comics in general. Are you big comic book fans? I know here in the studio we have all of CM's bookshelves.
Check out Transmetropolitan.
It was literally when we first started recording, I was like, oh, CM's cool. She has Transmetropolitan. I love that.
I have a tattoo about one of those. Oh, so the reason I very slyly looked over at my bookcase is because I have so many comics that I actually had to buy a new bookcase because I broke that one. The shelf collapsed.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice your new bookshelf is up.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Oops. I thought because it was a bookshelf, it could handle my books.
Having a bookshelf that collapses from too many books is a hysterical problem
it's
to have.
It's my third bookshelf that I've broken.
It's the
adorable.
It's the equivalent of breaking a bed through sex.
Okay, you've brought it up on the podcast before, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you just have to brag again.
No, I'm saying, but I'm saying it's the equivalent of it couldn't handle the books I had to put on it.
I get it, Josh. CM loves books as much as you love fucking. Okay.
Yeah, someone had to say it.
Wow. You must really love that.
podcast gets described as horny sometimes, and I'm like, what?
I have
And then
no idea.
moments like this happen, and I'm like, yes, we are a group of deviants.
Enough with the horniness.
Yeah.
We're talking about comic books.
Yeah.
We're
exactly.
talking about a vampire comic book. What do you mean enough with the horniness?
That's true.
Impossible.
So what other comics, Josh, how do you feel about comics in general?
I've read Saga thanks to you.
Yeah.
Saga's
God, I love Saga.
slaps. I'm in the last manga of Berserk,
Ooh.
which has been a long time favorite of mine. Every time I've seen a few people with the brand on their
Mhm.
neck, and every time I just want to give them the hardest high five.
Mhm.
And every once in a while, I would pick up the occasional graphic novel. I've read the
Mhm.
big DC ones like The Killing Joke. Obviously, you
Mhm.
track down the
Watchmen.
big death. Yeah, exactly. The classics. I've seen those. So the most recent that I'd read before this, I'm actually reading through the Dark Tower comic books
Oh,
right
nice.
now
Cool.
because
And what's that? No?
well, because we had mentioned on the show that we are coming up on Wizard and Glass soon,
Mhm.
and the comics cover that. So I thought, you know what? While I'm at it, I'm in the zone. So after we finished Wastelands, I just picked it up and started reading along. So that's the zone I've been in,
Mhm.
and so this fit kind of right into that reading.
I love a trade paperback because I don't have the memory to remember to pick up a new issue of a comic every
Yeah,
week.
that's rough.
Same.
I started with the second half of Saga when that started coming back from a hiatus. I think I picked up the first 10 or 12 issues before I was like, oh, that was a few months ago. I have no idea where we are now. We just got to wait for the trade paperbacks. So I was excited that,
Yeah.
Immediately you give up.
yeah, pretty much. I was like, oh, this is a whole thing
No,
right here.
No, I'm gonna rebuy half of this as soon as it comes out to.
hmm
That's 100% something I would do.
Yeah.
Can I ask you two a question?
Yeah.
Just simple answer. And listeners, if you want to email us or chime in on this, that'd be
Mhm.
awesome. What is the most interesting or unexpected comic that you have? And I'll go first so you guys can have a minute to think about it.
Mhm.
Mine is a Howard the Duck comic.
Ooh.
You know the sexy movie Howard the Duck?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's that's a noir,
Oh, I love
inspired.
that.
It's a noir comic. So
Mhm.
it's like, I have to have that noir duck comic.
I recently have really loved, there's a horror anthology comic called Ice Cream Man. Not to spoil the whole thing, but as it goes on, you start noticing that there are recurring characters that at first you're like, that looks just like the guy from this other book. It eventually becomes obvious that it's not an anthology comic, that there is a very surprising and weird lore twist.
Wild.
Highly recommend.
Hell yeah. I have a comic, a single issue comic. I think they only ever made 2, and I've never been able to find the people who made it. But it's called Harvest Moon. It's about a killer named Otto von Ark. He is the second child of a very wealthy man whose first child was lost due to some self-sacrificing, some empathetic death.
Mhm.
And so when Otto was born, he was given through psychotherapists and drugs, given no ego or super ego, so he's pure id.
Mm.
And because his father is very, very influential in the government, he basically lives a consequence-free life and goes around just killing people when he feels like it. And the comic is him telling the story of his childhood growing up, how he was developed while he is meticulously stalking and murdering a married couple in their house. And it ends with one of my favorite things.
Are you spoiling?
Well, no one's ever going to probably find
okay,
this.
Okay, would I just...
But if you search YouTube hard enough, you can find the film I made, the film version I made of this with me as the main character. He kills the husband and says, maybe I'll call the police or call for pizza. See which one gets here first. It's a game I like to play.
Jeez.
I thought that was hilarious
Wild.
as an edgy teen. But I made it in high school, I think, or in college as a student film. And I always wanted to track down the person who made it, and I could never find anything about it.
Well, that's our experience and thoughts on comics in general, I guess.
Really thought you, and that's our episode, folks.
Oh,
Thanks, Cody.
now we've shared all of our stories. Let's get into Pearl's story.
Ooh,
Pearl is our main character in the A story that was written by Scott Snyder, and it is a character that goes through the entirety of pretty much everything we talk about. Because we're going to do this in kind of act breaks, we're going to follow Pearl for a while and then jump around. I'll let you guys know when we're jumping.
Okay.
I would argue, without having read book 2, that Pearl seems to be just our main character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that there's some other characters kind of in the comic vein of there's an arc where we are following Pearl. It sets up the premise of the whole book, and then we get arc that doesn't seem to be connected to anything at all,
Which I like.
which I love.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I was so excited when our characters started interacting at the beginning. And when we start getting new characters later on, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see why any of this matters.
I feel stupid. Sometimes I was like, wait, is this character that other character? Because like the way they looked,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if there was supposed to be a connection or not, or yeah.
I definitely thought our vampire hunter lady's mother was
Yeah,
Pearl for
me
a
too.
minute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I get that.
I was like, oh, it's Pearl.
Yeah, and
I
no,
was
just
real
another
confident about it.
just another lady with black hair.
Was it really confusing when
But
her
they
and
look
Pearl
the
were in the same
same.
room at the same time?
No, I figured it out by now.
Oh,
No, and I actually really like the artwork, so this is not a knock on the artwork at all, but just for me personally, maybe I needed to go slower with it. There were at least 2 sets of characters. I was like, I don't know which one it is.
That's always my problem with comics in general.
I
is
never
I
had
have
that
to
before.
really,
Yeah.
I have to read comics a few times because
Same.
the first time I am reading mostly for the words
Yes.
and the plot, and obviously you have to follow the action through the pictures, but like any details, like really intricate stuff, I don't get until like the second read through usually.
I didn't catch the toe tag Easter egg. Did either of you catch
No.
that? Oh, get to it.
Okay.
I caught it on
Oh,
my
good.
second way
I'm
through.
glad only you know it. As always, when we do episodes, Josh just hoards the information.
That's what I do. So we open with Pearl in Los Angeles, July 1925. She's being tossed into a mass grave, and there's a narration that is her talking about the first Nickelodeon she saw and the dream of wanting to be an actress. And just before it goes to a flashback, the body says, "I'm still alive," and then smash cut to 3 days earlier. Thoughts on that opening? How tight?
I had to go back to it and reread it after I read through the next part to kind of, because I wasn't sure who I was dealing with, and she was all like, she looks messed up.
Yeah.
And she has been murdered hard. So when she said, and I think there was a tear in her eye when she's like, "Please, I'm still alive." I don't know. I thought she was a vampire then. Like I thought she meant, oh, like don't leave me in the sun. I've turned. Yeah, I thought she turned.
Oh.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong.
No, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a hell of a way to start the book.
Yeah.
And I do love like that starting off in the action before cutting back and introducing to us to 2 characters that I instantly loved.
Yeah, Pearl and
Yeah.
Hattie.
Oh.
They're wonderful.
They're so
They
cute.
are, and it hurts so much.
Yeah.
It's-
It hurts bad.
It's
good writing.
Really
Yeah.
good writing because
Yeah.
they are 2 extras in a movie. And this is 1925 at this point.
Cool
So it's
decade for this
Yeah.
to take place. I
On-
love the style.
I love like the time period where
Yeah.
it's so old timey and yet it's not like Wild West.
Yeah.
I like it better than the
feels-
Wild West period, the way that period always feels in anything to me, not like this specifically, but
Definitely. And they're extras on this like silent movie. So it's really cool. It shows like the changing of the era. They're talking about how, talkies are a ridiculous thing. And I love any of that shit. That's singing in the rain nonsense that I enjoy. But they're just
gossiping
pals
and being friends. And
talking about how hot the leading man is.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're instantly like, you feel like these two girls are besties.
Yeah.
And it makes the immediate heel turn really surprising.
Yes.
I guess it's not immediate,
Right, yeah.
but it's a
No,
lot faster than it seemed like it would be.
The way it was done, though, makes it
Mhm.
work. It doesn't feel like, oh, now you're just changing this character's character to fit the narrative. It
Again,
didn't feel like
it
that.
works. Second time through, I picked out how many times Hattie comments on how tough Pearl is, how strong she is. And the first time reading it, you read it with, I'm
She
building up my
admires
friend.
her, yeah.
Yeah. And the
supports
second
her.
time, you're like, ooh,
Oh, she's
wow.
she's so sad and like just jealous of everything Pearl has. This insecurity is
Mhm.
what makes her turn heel.
And it's a great example very early on after we cut from the scene of them on set with them saying they have to scream, say something scary. The rent's due tomorrow. Great.
Cute, just cute.
Yeah,
Very cute,
adorable.
yeah.
And they're on their way back to their apartment, and Pearl is mentioning she has 3 jobs.
Mhm.
She's
Mhm.
constantly working and trying to make it as an actress. And Hattie can't even get her half of the rent. She's having a hard time with that.
Mhm.
And so you immediately get the amount of effort these two people are willing to put in.
Mhm.
And that difference didn't stand out to me the first time the way it did the second, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But they see a mysterious man by the pool in a women's only apartment area. And it's a sexy cowboy.
You would be, even if it was a well, he'd have, okay, if he was a sexy cowboy, I'd allow it. And I'm sorry that I know that's shitty, but all you not sexy cowboys out there, you have to have permission.
This moment
Fair.
is ruined for me by genre awareness. Because
Sure.
obviously we're reading a vampire book and we're like, this dude, it looks pretty scuzzy. And like, you get the feeling that he is supposed to be
Like a grifter.
see, I got the feeling that he's supposed to be almost charming.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely
Okay.
that.
You gave like grifter vibes, but yeah,
yes,
charming.
But I don't know. If I were reading a book not knowing it were a horror or an action thriller, I'd be like, immediate shipping. Immediate. I'd be like,
There's still time.
Kind of.
hot, dirty
shipped
dude by the
already.
pool. Okay.
I'm shipping. I was shipping.
I can't get behind
I
his
he's got
Taylor
some
Swift.
things
Off
later
and on.
on that
Yeah.
make him
I-
far less attractive than he initially is.
I
'Cause he's
definitely,
horrible.
it took me a minute to be like, is he an anti-hero? Do they want him to be an anti-hero?
I think no.
no.
You definitely
You
come to
get
find
there.
out no. But I think what it is, correct me if I'm wrong or if you're picking up something else, he's confident.
Yes.
So that's what's attractive about him.
That
So-
he's got the Matthew McConaughey dirty boy kind of look. Yeah.
Oh, he's Matthew McConaughey. Oh, that's who
There
we
it
cast.
Yeah.
Well, Flag didn't work out, but maybe this. Maybe this McConaughey. We go to the nightclub where Pearl works at nights, and we meet Henry, who is a guitarist in the jazz band, who asks her out for the 4th, maybe 5th time.
This is also very cute. I
Mhm.
love because the way he's persistent is
It's wholesome. It's not like
is.
aggressive.
Yeah.
no, and it's very respectful.
Yeah.
He knows she's saying no, but he's like, consider this. Like, it's
It's cute.
Can
I'll show
I
you
walk? Can I walk
yeah.
you to? Though I know you're going to another job.
I know
can
you're
I
not
walk
going to
you
date me,
and-
but if I can walk with you, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
yeah.
And that is like that's an attractive quality.
Henry, the only good character in the story, not in that they're bad characters,
Yeah.
but the only like
Wholesome,
and
like
the only
morally.
the alignment chart good character.
Yes,
Yeah.
his character alignment is good.
He's in the white, the Stephen King
Definitely.
positive
I mean,
force.
he was. We find out that he was a soldier in the Marine Corps, so he's neutral good.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot that he was.
That reveal is. We'll get to that reveal. Actually,
Okay.
We'll talk about that. The next day on set, Pearl gets used as a stand-in for lighting for the main actress, and she gets
And
to,
it's hot.
Yes, it is. She gets to meet Chase Hamilton, the handsome movie star, who invites her to the producer BD Block's house party.
Immediately suspicious.
Oh,
I was
obviously.
so scared for her.
Oh, again, genre awareness. It's like, it's so obvious this guy is going to be, I thought he was going to be a main villain.
Okay.
Yeah?
I did too. And also, I'm sorry, I have to kind of, that's a really great point. So I'm sorry to jump to something else immediately, but
I love being told I make it a great point.
This threw me off because I thought that in the opening scene, she's in a truck with another corpse.
Yeah.
And again, because some of them look similar, which is fine. I thought that was Hattie. When we met them, I was like, oh, it's those two. So I was especially surprised later on, but when we find out that Hattie goes to the party with her, which I also love, it's like, oh yes, you get to take your best friend and you have that camaraderie. I was like, oh, they both die.
Well, I think we all kind of presume that because she gets led to a room and it's several vampires who rant about the talkies for a little bit.
It's a very quick scene. I thought that this party scene was going to be like, I guess I was expected them to play some sort of game with her for it to be revealed like later in the night when the party changed. Like the party began.
I like that she was just hors d'oeuvres.
Oh, I don't mind that either. It just surprised me. Yeah,
It's just at this point, I did not realize that the entire series would be a sequence of every character we meet becoming a vampire.
It falls. I have
not a complaint.
I have a
not
bit of a problem with that.
Really,
a little bit, and we'll get to it when it starts becoming too prevalent.
I will say though, I like that this, like we kind of talked about already. It's not about Pearl necessarily. She's just a player in this. It's more about the different types of vampires they are and what qualities they bring to being a vampire. And it reminds me of Kindred the Embraced. So there are these like different cultures of vampire. You can even have different features. And, we've seen this idea done a lot, since Kindred. This was like in the 90s that Kindred came out, but they all are skilled at different things. So there's like the vampires who are always the artists and, they all have, they share similar characteristics and features.
The romantic vampires.
Yeah. The business vampires, like stuff like that. The Nosferatus. So I really love that kind of world building where it's like simple, brief information, but it just makes such a big space. Bigger,
It's something that I kept. My opinion on this comic changed so frequently.
Interesting.
I would be like, I really like this. And then they'd introduce something else. And I'm like, wait a second. I did like, what is. Yeah. And when they first introduced the idea that there are these different kinds of vampires, I was like, that's a neat idea. But then early on, when it becomes this like, oh, wait, is this whole story going to be about the evil old world vampires versus the good guy new American vampires? Because that's cringe. I don't like that. And then it became more obvious, like we were talking about earlier, that like, oh no, Skinner is not an anti-hero. Like he's a bad dude. I came around on it again, and then it keeps going on this.
It's kind of political in a way.
Yeah.
It's drama.
Where it's like at first I was put off by how I was worried that it was just going to be like good guys versus bad guys, but everyone's vampires.
I mean, I'd read that too.
Sure.
I'm a sucker for vampires.
But I feel the same way about that I feel about like the manga and anime Tokyo Ghoul, which is about this kid that becomes a ghoul, which is basically just a zombie person that they have to eat humans, but he's a good ghoul, so he eats humans, but he's good. I don't know. Don't worry about it. So I was worried it was going to be that, and then it didn't be that, and then it became this like political, like you were saying, this like it's more about the ideologies between the vampires, but then I'm like, but they all suck. They're all vampires. They're all villains. I don't know. Yeah, my feelings about this fluctuated a lot as it went.
Interesting.
I ended up landing on I like it becoming like I want a whole book about vampire genealogy and like
Seriously.
Vampire baby.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yep, there is a vampire baby in this. But no, I mean like the Gaelic vampire.
Yeah.
I want to learn more
Yeah.
about that. And
And
like
that's the part I was referencing, like to Kindred, that those components are
yeah.
satisfying to start to learn.
Mhm.
So we're going to go back to Act 2 for Pearl, which is titled Morning Star. And we open with Henry has come by their apartment, even though he knows he shouldn't, but Pearl didn't show up for work, and that's unlike her. They go to her room, not there, go and find her in the desert. What I thought
Ooh.
was a random happenstance, but now it kind of turns out one of them knew where she was.
Oh my god, I didn't even think of that. I was just like,
Yeah.
I just chalked it up for comic book logic. 'Cause
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
In the format of a comic book,
Yeah,
sometimes you just
when
have
you
to
need
gloss
be there,
over stuff.
Then you're
Yeah.
just there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The magic of art.
Yeah. And they see Pearl walking and she collapses. They take her to the hospital.
She looks messed up. It
Yeah.
sucks.
It's real bad.
The art is cool.
Yeah, it really is. And the doctors basically say she's lost too much blood. She was attacked by wild animals. She's dying. There's
Mhm.
nothing we can do.
And then she wakes up in the morgue after a weird dream about her dad.
well, we get we see our visitor first.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We see the weirdo from the pool sneak into her room while fireworks are lighting off in the background.
Yeah, they are.
Are you shipping them hard?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stop because I really like Henry, but for
Yeah.
now,
Mm.
shipping.
And something I really thought it was interesting that he kisses her on the eye, and like there's
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
he pierces his lip
His
with his
lip, yeah.
fang, which
Mhm.
okay. I mean, that's a move.
yeah.
And was it okay? And then he leans down and basically kisses her eye, and he lets his blood drop into her eye, which
Mhm.
is like, oh yeah, people do drugs through their eyeballs, I guess.
Well, it's
Wait,
also
right?
because
Right,
we're
yeah.
Okay.
discussing this. I mean, in the first episode of Cowboy Bebop, yes, a lot of anime talk this episode, y'all.
I wanted to sound cool, but not too cool.
We're discussing all of this out of order, but it's a parallel to before this we get Skinner Sweet's origin, and he gets blood in his eye, and so he passes it on to her.
The way he knows how.
Yeah, he's like, blood has to get in your eye.
I
Okay.
guess this is the way we do it. But yeah, so he creates a progeny, and she wakes up in the morgue, and the Easter egg that I mentioned earlier is one of the toe tags is for a Jack Torrance.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh wait, I think I did notice that. I forgot. Yeah, because I was trying to look for Stephen King
He
Easter
doesn't
eggs.
die in LA. That's ridiculous.
And she finds her way home, and Skinner is at her house and gives her a short spiel about you're something new, you're something different. I left you a list on the fridge. See ya.
Okay, and it's a list of the old vampires' weaknesses
Mhm.
and their like strengths and weaknesses, like difference between them, us.
They're daywalkers.
Okay, the way he introduces her to her new world was so fascinating. I just did
Yeah.
not expect it to be this, I don't know, very straightforward, unromantic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the type of information is just like, huh, these are all weird things I didn't think they'd be talking about. Okay. It was actually, I liked it because it gave me the feeling of what it must be like to hear that for the first time as someone who's experiencing it. You know, because we all know the vampire lore and we can rattle off okay, this is what you would tell a newly born vampire.
Yeah.
And this changed that, and that was neat.
And we also find out that she, unlike the traditional vampires, has a reflection. Just
I love
it's
that.
Very
yeah, it's like Funhouse mirror.
Yeah.
It's a really cool little
Okay,
neat bit.
I'm again so dumb because you're looking at it so you can see their reflections are standing next to each other, the two vampires. And I thought her mirror was just broken until later when we see that again.
I do like on the list of strengths and weaknesses, under weaknesses, he says, why spoil the fun? And gives her no indication. I think because he doesn't know.
Oh yeah,
I think so, too.
I think they all would establish that later on.
Mhm.
Oh,
yeah,
I wasn't sure if they that he didn't know, that he hadn't figured it out over this time.
Well, I don't think he has, because they didn't get the chance to do to him what they're going to do eventually. We're going to find out.
But he does, before leaving Pearl to adapt to her new life as a vampire, there's a little present for her in the closet. What did you think of that little gift?
Felt good.
Yeah, it is the big time Hollywood movie star that invited her to the party to feed to the producers.
I was hoping that part of how these vampires ate would be that she would be able to consume everything.
She does rip him apart.
He was so, like, we saw skeleton.
Yeah,
right?
did.
So part of me was like, wait a minute, are these the kind of vampires? Like, can she eat everything but the bones?
Before she leaves his body, as she drags him off, she unties him and he runs to the phone.
Because he's alive.
Yeah, he's still alive. And he runs to the phone and he calls the vampires and is saying that he got kidnapped. And she takes a second in the, new lighting, new state to realize just exactly who it is. And when she does, he tries to run away. And when she transforms, Lady Deathclaw.
Oh my God, so cool. This was my favorite part.
That design, besides Lady Deathclaw, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, how would you describe the style of vampire they turn into besides pointy?
It reminds me of the features of, like, think bats. Like maybe even a fruit bat, I want to say, where she's got like more of like these longer, spindlier features, and her like long fingers with, what am I, like Parasite Eve, the game?
Yeah.
I think of when she kind of transforms. It's a little bit like that, and it's so cool.
Yeah, she's got a Lady Dimiscue claw, right?
Yeah.
A lot of lady talk.
Yes.
And she says that she has some questions for him first and drags him off. So I'm going to imagine those chunks missing were from the interrogation.
So I have a question.
That makes sense.
Is it stated outright, or are we just meant to assume that the reason that Skinner gave her this gift at all was specifically to use as a weapon against Bullock?
Eve, it's because she's got some sass in her and he liked that. He told her.
Well,
I do like that too.
Skinner seems like the
you
kind
seem
of
really cool as a vampire.
He seems like someone who would do something like that, but he also seems like someone who would do something like that on a whim, like without having an ulterior motive, just like
Agent
could be
of
a little more
chaos.
chaos in the world. Yeah, so I went the other way.
Yeah,
I was still shipping. I had to.
Now we're gonna depart from Pearl's story, and we're gonna focus on Skinner's story, the section that was written by Stephen King, because after this transformation, a lot of this story begins to make a lot more sense. So we're gonna pick things up with Act 1, Bad Blood. It is in Los Angeles in 1925, the same time we are with Pearl, where Will Bunting is at a book reading for a book he wrote, Bad Blood, about a fictionalization of a real event that happened in 1880 Sidewind.
This storyline with him is my favorite element of just overall what this book does.
Yeah.
Because we're going to talk about it, but we come to find out that this book was very popular. He wrote about something that actually happened, but it was presented as fiction.
Yes.
As some, an adventure.
He added vampires.
Yeah, he added vampires. So it's like this horror adventure book. And so he's doing this. So imagine going to your favorite author's book signing. And it's like, some sort of special anniversary of the story. And instead of just talking about, things he's probably said in interviews and stuff or you've heard before, he's like, by the way, this isn't fiction. This actually happened, and there's more to the story. The people in the crowd bitching at him and calling him crazy suck because, like,
That's your take.
Even if it
That's
was
amazing.
Even if it was like a bit, what care it like to put into something like that to give your audience? I wish I was a writer because that's how I do my book signings.
I was so close to being like, Sam, we got to walk through this. You're telling me that if Stephen King today said Salem's Lot was true, and then I had to stop myself because I'm like, obviously, I'm not going to pretend that you, C.M. Alexander, would not go, yeah, no, we need to go to Salem's Lot right now and burn it down because it's full of goddamn vampires.
I mean, you're right about everything but burning it down. I mean,
We gotta get
knocking
there.
on the door.
The introduction we have to Skinner Sweet is he's been arrested. We find out he is a bank robber who is raped, murdered, robbed his way across the
He's
Wild
killed
West.
children too, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
This is where I had to stop shipping. I actually
Mhm.
wish the way you're taking us through this story,
Mhm.
not the way we read it. No, I wish that I had read it the way we're talking about it,
Mhm.
because we know a lot of what we're going to learn about Skinner in between Pearl's stories.
Mhm.
So I just wanted the experience of being surprised, because you would have wondered about his motivations
Mhm.
with her and what kind of person he was. And then to see, oh, he's this person, would have been a nastier surprise after we watched him do something good.
I agree. And especially because if we would have had that like question of like, who is this guy? Is
Mhm.
he a good guy or a villain? Is he here? Does he have are his motives, even though he's not the best guy, he is doing this thing that is an ultimate good for the world, you know?
I want to be observing his actions without any bias, and I want to just be
Yeah.
surprised.
But then like the second issue, it's like, he ran with the worst people
Mhm.
and he's racist and
Mhm.
he's
Sex
no,
He
trafficker.
and a
incentivized
sex
all of those
trafficker. Yeah.
things.
No, he's not. There's no question. Because then later in Pearl's things, he keeps acting kind of cool. And you're like, are we supposed to like
I
this
know.
guy? Are we supposed to think this dude is awesome? He talks kind of like Roland.
But
So like
this is because we have two different authors writing each of these stories. So our one guy kind of made someone Stephen King had very clearly delineated as like, this guy does bad stuff, we don't like him. Made it more complicated.
yeah.
I realize going back to the Pearl's just a weapon at the end of the day. I imagine there's a line later on, like where there's truces that are mentioned here and
Mhm.
there. I assume this is a way of breaking the truce without officially breaking it,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
they also make a comment that he would never make progeny because he's too arrogant.
Mhm.
And I just realized he makes Pearl right before A Moonless Night in the same town with
Oh,
all
you're
these
right.
people.
I
And
didn't
it was
think about that.
just to give them something else to focus on while he couldn't do anything.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Pearl's is
He's
trash.
so
Hardcore
sucks.
evil.
He's
Yeah.
a
hardcore
bad
but
dude.
he's so like conniving.
Yeah.
That's
He's a
it's a
cool
good
villain.
villain.
It's
yeah.
what we love about Flag.
Yeah.
It's that same.
He's got a Flag vibe.
Yeah.
And I was so glad because, like, through this first part, this is what I was talking about earlier, where he has been arrested by the Pinkertons, which is a whole other thing that makes
Real
me go,
agency.
so are these guys supposed to be good guys or bad guys? Because they're Pinkertons, so they're not. The Pinkertons are bad. They are union busting murderers, and I hate them. But so it was like, okay, so is he gonna be like, he's a vampire, but he's fighting the Pinkertons? Or am I just reading my politics into this too much? I don't know. Yeah, it's
Yeah. The vampire that is on this train is basically the one who put up the reward for the capture.
He's wearing sunblock and has an umbrella.
It's so obvious.
and looks
I love
like
it.
a goddamn
And I was just gonna
vampire.
say,
Goddamn
I really
vampire.
had to stare at him because I'm like, well, he's clearly a vampire.
Yeah, why is he outside?
But why does I really
Right.
questioned how sunscreen could be sufficient. But I mean, I have to accept. I'm fine with it now. But I was like,
Yeah.
nah, that wouldn't be enough. Like, okay.
But they're transporting him to be hanged. And along this train ride, Skinner knows a lot about James Book, the lawman that brought him to justice. Thoughts on Book?
Book is supposed to be our protagonist.
For this
Yeah.
arc.
Yeah, he's a complicated character too, I feel like, which I appreciate. He's not just sort of your canned, I'm the good guy who's going to get you from point A to point B. And if there's an issue along the way, I'm the good guy who's going to, do what I need to do to wrap it up. The storylines with Book didn't grab me the way the other ones did. And they're
I
not
agree.
bad. I think again, it's harder for me, which I know is weird because The Gunslinger is like my favorite book, but it's harder for me to get into that era because it just feels so bad. Like, I guess I have a phobia of living
Of the
in
Wild
the
West?
early Wild West and just how okay, no, here's my problem. I watched Unforgiven for the first time before reading this with Clint Eastwood,
Mm.
where they cut up a sex worker's, that's not what they called her at the time, but
Mm.
a sex worker's face, and then they put a bounty out. The sex workers, they pool all their money, and then all these bad guys are coming into town to kill these guys, but the sheriff's not letting them. And it's so oppressive. It's so filthy. It's so terrifying. It's so scary because what the law is in these times, you know, it's like this lawless era, but you have these towns where the sheriffs have to make that law happen, and sometimes they have to go to such extremes, or they think they do, you know, whatever, that they end up doing these horrible, really intense things that we, you know.
That's wild. You explaining Westerns just now made me like Westerns more than I usually do. Because I'm
Same,
not a
kind of.
huge fan of Westerns just because I usually find them pretty
It's
boring.
Clint Eastwood, and he's older, but I mean, that's our closest. That is the most accurate gunslinger adaptation we have right now.
What were we talking
Anyway,
about?
sorry.
Cowboys? Vampires?
The amount of information that Skinner even knows Book's fiance's name, and that he drops it very casually.
The idea that Skinner is someone and Book didn't know that, like someone in a way that Book didn't know, that he has powerful connections, you would assume, based on what he knows, is a really intriguing thing to throw into this storyline. Like, oh, he's a vampire, or, well, he's not a vampire, yeah, but we know he's a vampire. He's going to be hanged. He's, you know, we think we're seeing his origin story, but then just it being kind of deeper than that is cool.
We flash to the 6 months prior, the bank heist that started all of this. They robbed $20,000 from this bank and afterward hid out in an old abandoned mine.
I feel like that was a super lot in that time.
Yeah, that was an insane amount. It was so much that's why Percy, the vampire, put out the kind of reward he did. He later says this was supposed to be an example to anybody who stole from me, and it turns into a clusterfuck.
These older vampires are so fucking dull.
They really are.
And I mean, they're meant to be.
Yeah.
It's effective, but yeah.
I like the idea of a vampire story where the vampires are aristocracy, where they are powerful business people who go figure. I like the idea of a vampire story where the vampires are
The 1%.
are evil. They are not just eating human beings. They are sucking the lifeblood out of society as
They're
a
shaping
whole
society
as
and our
leeches.
economy.
It's a good bit.
Yeah.
And this is one of those low moments where I was like, okay, that's cool. But then they're making Sweet out to be this like, oh, well, he's the American vampire.
Almost like a Robin Hood figure.
Exactly. And he's going to be the new American type of vampire who fights off against all these European vampires who want to take all our money. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. Because he's still a vampire. He's still a racist. He's still evil. But then when that is the exact opposite of what happens later on, when we get another time jump and Sweet has basically become what these old school vampires
He found
are.
his business.
Exactly. I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And maybe,
It's really good.
that's why it's good, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the other storyline because it's a little too, oh, but this is my reality every day. I don't want to, I'm escaping.
The people who were in Sweet's gang that managed to get away, they fuck up the rails on the train, cause a derailment, and that's how they rescue Sweet. And Skinner, I'm sorry, I jumped over the reveal that Skinner sent a bottle of poison wine to Book's
Mhm.
fiance with a letter from him.
The letter from Book was really actually very romantic and
Yeah.
sweet, and I wish I could remember it, but it was
It was like drink
heartbreaking.
deep
Yeah.
and think of me.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
If anybody ever said that to me, whatever they asked me to do next, I would do. Just never say that to me.
So yeah, Percy reveals himself as a vampire, throws a big old tantrum about how terrible this has gone.
He sucks as a vampire.
He does.
And then Skinner shoots him in the eye, and blood splatters back on Skinner, and it turns him into a vampire.
We did miss one reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Skinner likes candy.
Yes, he has a sweet tooth.
Oh, and that's what he used to break out of the cuffs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He sucked that candy cane pointy. I don't know why.
Oh my god. Oh my goodness.
I guess I
No other
needed
way to say that.
No,
elaborate on that.
I think we all know what you mean.
He put it in his mouth.
Yep. Like a real American.
Yeah, suck that.
That's gonna be the tagline on the movie poster when it eventually comes out.
Yeah,
American
suck that.
Vampire, suck that.
In Act 2, Deep Water, we go back to Will Bunting as he is telling this story and getting challenged by several people in the audience. And we find out that Skinner was buried in Sidewinder in a
Wait, because he got shot by Book, right?
Yeah, Book shoots him in the end, and so he's buried there, and there's a council of those vampires that berate him for his arrogance, thinking that blood got on him, it could make a vampire. And Percy's like, no, it's fine, because not only is he buried underground, vampires can't dig, but it's about to be buried underwater because we're building a dam, and there's no way he'd be able to get out.
Do they put him there because they're building a dam and they want to bury him underwater and like torture him? Because that he would be like, oh no, that probably didn't change him. My blood seems so stupid that I was hoping that he was just trying to mask like this like over the top torturous plan of, because later when we
That's what
see
I
Skinner
assumed.
in the coffin and then it's water, that's very upsetting. Very, very upsetting.
No, I know I've heard the classic vampire lore that vampires can't cross running water. I had never heard, because this says that vampires cannot surface or they can't move underwater or something.
Like it just incapacitates them.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. I didn't know if that was a real thing.
I have not heard that in anything else.
No,
So
me
it might be unique to this. It's a cool idea. I like it.
Yeah. We should mention Book was also injured in the accident, and he enters a coma for a few days, and his partner gets the letter that his fiance did drink the wine and was poisoned. And I love the line of like, you sometimes hope the person won't wake up so you won't have to give them the news.
That's so...
Yeah.
Did either of you think, or maybe it's just me having wishful thinking, that maybe he was just saying that to rile him up, but he didn't actually do that and she was okay?
I thought it was a possible, but
okay.
no.
Sweet's got a thing about killing wives and fiancés, man. It's his jam. Book then goes back to New Mexico to visit his wife's grave, and we find out that Will and his partner Felix, they're all just gonna continue to adventure together. And this is where we leave them in this section.
I really thought the just keep up thing was gonna come to mean something.
It'll probably like when
Can you
he's
describe?
dying.
Yeah, no, there's still, he isn't dead yet, so in the story.
There's more time. So yeah, when they go to leave, the Book says, I'm going home, and Will asks, can I join? And he says, keep up.
And it becomes a
And it
running
becomes-
thing
yeah.
of this guy every time he needs to be around to describe something that already happened. He tags along so he can be our narrator.
And then we get a few time jumps over just things that Book and Felix accomplished over their career as lawmen, the bounties they captured, the criminals they brought to justice. Felix got married to Benito Juarez. Book was his best man. Will shared the notes of what would become bad blood with Book, and Book didn't much care for it. And in 1890, Felix and Benita have a daughter named Abelina. Book is named Godfather and imprints on her.
Thank you. Perfect. We don't even have to talk about that
Nope.
shit now.
Nope.
People get it.
People get
I
it.
hated that.
Thank you, Twilight, for giving me that. And
Only good thing Twilight ever
Right.
did.
and we find out that Benita did not survive childbirth, so it's just Felix and his daughter and Book. And
I do
then-
just want to make sure everyone notes that the best thing that Twilight ever did was give us language for falling in love with a baby.
Oh, I just said that.
Yeah, no, that's why I was pointing out what you just implied.
That's true.
I wasn't clear enough.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say those words.
We end this section with Lakeview, Colorado, which is what is been built upon the new area after the dam was built.
Mhm.
As scavengers dive to the resting place of Skinner Sweet because somebody wants to buy his skull or his hat if he still has it. And I wonder if this is going to be something that's brought back around. We're going to
You think
find
so?
out.
Who wanted his hat?
Yeah. That's because somebody sent a team down there to get it.
Hmm.
Granted, they might not have known, but I feel like there's a little mastermind piece by there that there's just a buyer wants this. We're going to go dig up this specific grave. I don't know.
Interesting.
I'm going to keep reading the series, so I hope I'll find out.
Yeah.
I was going to save it for ratings, but I'm a little annoyed that I have to keep reading this series because it got me.
Either way, the scavengers find Skinner and he eats them.
Yeah.
I think also part of the not fearing what would happen if he got out is 50-50 chance if he tried to swim up, it'd be during the day, and then he'd get roasted. Because as far as they know, he's going to operate the same way the other vampires have. Moving on to Act 3, Blood Vengeance. We have Will reintroducing the wraparound story of him continuing his book. This time, I think it's in this one that one of the guys telling him to stop lying sits down, and it turns out he's sitting next to Skinner Sweet.
Yeah, that was
He's like,
cool.
I want to hear the rest of the story.
This guy is why I got so deep into my idea of how cool it would be if you were in that audience and he's your favorite author. Because this guy pissed me off. And I was like, I'm going to get him. What if this happened? I don't know.
What did you think of Sweet's first visit after surfacing being a candy shop? He just breaks into a candy shop and starts eating candy.
So he still eats? Does he only eat candy?
I think he makes a comment about it not tasting as good.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
would suck.
And then he eats the
deserves
shop
that,
owner.
though.
Yeah, let's take that away from
Maybe
him.
he should eat people he's fed candy to, and their blood would taste sweeter.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah, the guy later on who can only get drunk by drinking
Oh,
drunk
yeah.
people.
That shit rules.
eat sweet people.
Yeah, eat sweet people. Slowly, he kills everybody in town, essentially. He mangles the entire town.
That's again, it's our gunslinger annihilating an
When
entire town.
It's Collie and Trajan.
yeah, it is.
Ooh, this is very
Yes.
desperation
Yeah.
vibes.
When he just passes the warehouse of explosives and is like, oh shit,
yeah,
here we go.
He's so confident though throughout this
yeah.
whole I feel like there isn't a single panel of him not being so confident.
Mhm.
no, the fact that it took so long for me to come down on very clearly being like, I don't like this guy very much. It took longer than it should have.
He just needs to stop doing cool stuff.
That's the thing. He looks and talks cool.
Yeah.
Well,
What am I supposed to do?
the
I can
great
fix him, Josh.
Yes.
No, Eve, I won't let you fall into this trap. You're right. It doesn't help that his scenes are so badass because he corners who is now the chief of police, Finch, who he before the train wreck said he wanted to shoot his balls off.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
He gets a hold of Finch and essentially says, "Tell me where Book is."
This has been
Or
3
else.
years, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that he's been buried.
Mm.
And when he gives him the answer, he hands him a lit stick of dynamite. And he says, I thought you said you wouldn't kill me. And I said, and he goes, You bet wrong. And he blows up. It's awesome.
That's all we need to know about Skinner.
Yeah.
That he can't trust what he says.
Exactly. Everything he says is a lie.
But maybe sometimes he's telling the truth.
When he's talking to me.
Yeah.
We have a special connection where he's honest with me.
I'm the only one because I'm special.
We have a problem.
Oh, no.
Skinner then sends a telegram to Book via approaching the telegram person with a severed head, the severed head of his partner's dad, requesting that he meets him in the mines where he hid the ill-gotten gains from the robbery all that time ago. So the good guys ride out to Lakeview. The coven of vampires are watching as the town burns and berating Percy a little bit, and they send their best people after him. Ronnie Jeeks and the Blackmouth twins.
Who are dudes that were in Skinner's writing party when he was arrested in the first issue.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be like, oh, this guy, he's so bad that the vampires are so bad that they'll work with the bad guys.
It's so bad.
It's
all
so bad, y'all.
Well, the villains stake out the entrance to the cave. They know that Skinner's inside. He hasn't come out. They love that they're like, he's going to be really mad when he finds out that we came back and took all that gold. So like, yeah, but we thought he was dead. He's going to be really pissed. And surprisingly, I thought that Skinner was going to be the one to kill these guys.
Me too.
Yeah. But instead, we're going to jump to Act 4, One Drop of Blood. We are now in 1909, and the good guys have arrived to Lakeview to discuss the possibility of vampires, because Book still is not willing to accept that this is possible. He thinks it has to be somebody doing a very elaborate prank.
Yeah.
Jokingly murdering a town.
Yeah.
Murdering with flair.
Yeah, exactly. During this duration, this is where Skinner discovers that on moonless nights, he has seemingly no power whatsoever and can't put up any fight. Book and the gang show up to...
I'm sorry, that's such a cool vampire detail.
Yeah? You like that?
I think it's cool. Yeah, I think tying, there's the sun does something. So having the moon also serve a role that's equally as significant in vampire lore is cool. And I don't feel like we've seen a lot of stuff has been introduced in this. New ideas.
It is, yeah. Coming up with whole cloth new vampire lore that
fit with vampire lore.
I like how to put this. I like how physical vampirism seems in this book. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, whereas vampires, like traditionally, I just kind of see as, they're monsters, they're magic or whatever.
It's almost like mystical, like you can't touch that. And this is like,
yes.
we could know vampires if that's what vampires were like.
And it feels so much like, this is a disease that these people have, this affliction inside of them. Yeah, it's a really cool way of showing, and even the way the different kinds of vampires have different abilities, weaknesses. It just really rounds out the world. Yeah. I think it's good world building.
I'm 1,000% on board for the genealogy book. Seriously.
Yeah. What do you think our time we have?
I mean, we still have
we haven't even finished
so
Skinner's
much.
story.
Jesus
we could
Christ.
split this into two.
Well, honestly,
yeah, I'm down to do
for
two. So let's finish Skinner's story, and then part 2 will be the rest of Pearl's arc.
Can you real quick give me we're gonna like at the top when I threw it to you? Yeah.
Let's do it all the way at the end so you don't have to find it in this edit.
Okay,
Good idea.
I'm not gonna remember, so one of you have to help me remember.
Yeah, we'll clap a bunch.
Well, that never does anything. You know that.
Clap me, daddy.
Okay.
That note will remind me what I'm doing.
Definitely. Taking notes like I take notes on the books. The fuck does this mean?
What does this mean? Now, when the good guys arrive, they get immediately knocked out by the gang, and Felix discovers the head of his father that is just hanging outside of the entrance to the lair, and he rushes into the mine. Hell hath no fury, and sets off a trap and gets his face burned off, basically.
Oof.
And Albina and James run in, see half of his face burned off, and she kisses her goddad.
And that's not even, like, you think, oh, no, that's...
It,
But
honest
it
to God,
gets-
it makes so much sense. It really does.
Explain.
Okay, so what I'm gathering from all this is essentially, I'm not saying this is right.
Not condoning it, I'm understanding it.
Okay.
Is that her whole life has been fighting crime with her dad and Book.
Her dad's friend. She doesn't think of him as her godfather.
Right.
She thinks of him as a daddy's hot friend.
Well, and everything we know about Book does it. I don't think Book ever acted paternally towards her in any way. He doesn't
he
seem
didn't
like
act
that kind
any
of
way towards her, except just respectfully, like, you're my friend's daughter. Like, he didn't seem warm.
He treated a woman like a person.
I get why she
Makes
fell
sense.
for him then.
No, it's
Hard to find.
always super cool when a woman falls in love with a man who has
Over
known
her-
her since she was a baby.
And over her father's corpse.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
also that.
Look, I immediately was like, you've changed a diaper. You had, like, that's so fucked up. Like,
okay,
gross.
let's...
It's so gross. But to Book is
Oh,
that's-
that affected CM
but
in a
that's
real
Book's
way.
reaction. But that's Book's reaction to it.
Yeah.
Is
Oh,
like,
yeah.
whoa,
And
For a
rightfully
little-
so.
for a little bit.
unacceptable.
For a little bit.
Until he's a vampire.
Things get extreme. I'm saying their circle is very small. Their circles become a line. All right. No, let me censor myself for just a minute.
Thank you, because I also
Jesus.
took that to a place where I was like, oh, I don't even want to say that.
Yeah.
After the kiss and Book pushing her away, he says, "You need to get the fuck out of here. No good can
Gross.
come from
Bad.
Yeah, get out of here and think about. Go to your room. And think about what you
You're
did.
a baby.
No, I'm not trying to make it worse. Bad girl. No, stop it.
When James goes further into the cave, he discovers the rest of Felix's body and shoots Skinner, who is still very weakened from the moon. And Skinner grabs just a chunk of the wall, I think.
That was cool,
and
yeah.
Throws it across the room and knocks Book down. And Skinner decides that he's gonna go full Joker on this one and say, I need a nemesis, otherwise eternity could be a real long time.
Also, why part of me was thinking, what plans did he have sometimes? Like,
Right. And he thought that, I like that, again, it's everything we know about Sweet, the idea of destroying Book absolutely, completely to the core of his person.
well, and the sad thing is that he does, and it works.
No, he doesn't.
Book is no.
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I
yeah.
was gonna say his plan works because Book never, like, he's not a vampire like Pearl is, like, accepts his situation and nature. He's tormented by it, it seems.
But that's why his plan fails. He wanted
I
a
guess I was
Sherlock Holmes
referring
to his Moriarty.
Sorry, I guess I was referring to when you were saying that he, you know,
Yeah.
the emotional toll of that. Like, he wanted to break him completely. He broke him too well, I guess, might be more appropriate.
He
didn't get a nemesis because
he couldn't break him far enough. Because Book
Book story is just
give
so
in.
sad to me, though. Like, it's
It really
just
is.
nothing. I guess I feel like Book wastes his life.
It's
like he died.
Okay, so let's continue the comparison
Okay.
to Skinner being the Joker. And he wants Book to be his Batman. But this would be like if Joker killed Tim Drake and Batman went, well, fuck this, and then killed himself.
Or Batman never built his Batcave. He just lived in a cottage in the woods.
Yeah, he doesn't become he doesn't go as far as losing his humanity to become like Skinner, but he knows
He lives in purgatory.
Yes, and the hunger is too much that he can no longer take it. And so he goes to his goddaughter and is like, hey, you got to kill me. And she's like, okay, you got to kill this pussy first. And he's like, okay.
He's like, slay all day.
He's resistant to the idea still, at least. I needed that. I didn't need what you said.
I didn't need it, but I appreciated it. And this is also, I mean, we're dealing with period pieces. We're in the 1910s. The idea that what ends up making Book come around to it is her saying, after losing you, that's it. I've got nothing. Everyone's gone. I'm fertile right now, and let's put a baby in me.
And this is an idea that had kind of briefly developed in my head, but the way the story is structured, you don't get long to think things the incorrect way. I thought that maybe Pearl's blood, because she was related to someone he made. So maybe there's like some of that blood. His blood was in Book, and so his blood might be in her because I thought she was the baby.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's like, oh, maybe that's why he turned her, because she's family in a way.
Yeah, I can see
I mean,
that.
no,
how
that's
that
not
could
it,
have.
but that would have been
Would've been
typical
cool. Yeah.
and kind of cool.
That's when you're dealing with genre stuff, though. Like, your mind automatically goes there. You try to get ahead of the story
Yeah,
a
it
little
was
bit
just
that
fun.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun to do all the what ifs of
And I guess
these
that's
kind of
why
stories.
I want the structure to be different, because I wanted to sit with that a little longer.
Yeah. I want to talk about at the very end with Book, because we establish to this point we still don't really understand the strengths, weaknesses of these vampires, and because Book doesn't know exactly how to kill himself, he uses the moonless night, and he is shot. She shoots him on a moonless night. Think anything can do it. Here's the thing: we don't see a body.
Yep, 1,000%.
I'm just like, I love the idea, because Skinner later attaches great meaning to, on a moonless night you can kill me with anything. He's just assuming that. I think based on what he finds, that Book ended up being killed.
I don't know. Later on, we find out that to truly kill a vampire, you have to destroy the head or heart. Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. And this section ends back with Will Bunting, who is wrapping up this talk, and people are getting in line for an autograph signing, and he wraps things up by saying, I don't know if Skinner Sweet ever got out from that, but
he didn't see him in the audience.
Yeah. He says, I get those newspapers delivered to me, and I have seen stories of
He's the Mike
prospectors
of the story, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, he fucking rules, just like Mike.
Mike Hanlon.
But he believes that Skinner is out there somewhere, and that his story is just kind of beginning. And as the line is going through all the people who are coming up to have their book signed, he gets a note scrawled in blood from the guy who was heckling him a bit. What does it say?
It's a note from Skinner Sweet saying, hey, y'all, you're old as fuck and you're gonna die. I let you live. Fuck yourself. That's pretty much it.
It kicks ass.
He's just like, you are so insignificant to me. Die of old age, idiot.
He fucking rules. And Sweet walks his merry ass out of there, only to be seen by two women from across the street. CM, who are those two women?
They're not Albina and her daughter Pearl. But it is her daughter.
Yes, it is. However, Albina and her daughter Felicia.
Thank you.
And Felicia asks, basically, so we killing him now? And Mom says, we'll wait. And that's where we're going to leave things on this episode, because there's just, we talked so much about vampire lore. We haven't even got to so much of the story. And yeah, we just finished covering the part by Stephen King, but I had so much fun. I really want to go through the rest of this with you
me
guys.
too.
Definitely
Yeah?
agree.
Perfect.
And that is it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for the next episode, where we will be finishing American Vampire Book 1. For Joshua Kahn and Eve Gatto, I'm CM Alexander, reminding you, clap me, daddy. No, I'm
Excuse me?
This is no...
Excuse me, Josh?
The heart wants what the heart wants.
Time is the only constant. For the living, it never stops. For the dead, it doesn't matter. For the undead, time is a joke to be laughed at. everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to American Vampire Part 1. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know your thoughts on our Facebook or Instagram at Derry Public Radio or X at Derry Public. You can also send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. And you can join our conversations about Stephen King and all things horror on our Discord. The link for that is in the show notes. Don't forget to check out our Patreon for bonus episodes at the $5 and up tier and our Etsy store for fun merchandise. Search Derry Public Radio on both of those platforms. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.